3 bone-chilling beach house horror stories you've never heard before. Are you ready to be haunted? The moon hung low over the waves that night, as if dangling by a thread, and the salty breeze whispered secrets through the skeletal palms lining the beach house. It was a picturesque setting. But like the calm before a storm, something sinister lurked beneath the surface. Long ago, that beach house had been the backdrop for unspeakable horrors. No one talked about it. Locals preferred to keep the past buried like a victim at the bottom of the ocean. Long nights turned into a parade of eerie noises, rustling curtains like ghostly fingers brushing against skin and floorboards creaking underfoot as if the very house mourned its lost souls. But the whispers began first. Old fishermen claimed to hear children's laughter echoing on the wind, though no child had stepped foot there in decades. There were tales of flickering lights that danced like fireflies, illuminating a window that hadn't been occupied for years. And yet every so often, the outline of a girl could be spotted, staring out with hollow eyes, an invitation to unravel the mystery or to seal one's fate. Weeks passed before anyone dared to sleep in the house. But when Emily and Tom, a newlywed couple seeking adventure, crossed the threshold, they were enveloped by an unsettling chill. The first night, dreams turned to nightmares. Shadows twisted and writhed at the corners of their eyes, with soft whispers curling like smoke in their ears. "Did you hear that?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the lump in his throat growing heavier by the second. Just when the tension reached its peak, the couple stumbled upon a hidden cellar. A rusty door creaked open, revealing the darkness within. What were they about to uncover? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Tom felt the icy fingers of dread crawl up his spine as he peered into that small space. What lay beyond? The musty smell of decay wafted out, making his stomach churn. As they stepped inside, the sound of scratching echoed softly, gradually building like the thunder before a downpour. Their flashlights flickered, casting shadows that swirled ominously around them. Emily's breath quickened. Something moved behind them. Was it the wind? Or was it more alive? The haunting laughter joined in once more, this time closer, almost too close. What in the world? Tom breathed, disbelief flooding him. As they clutched each other, a sense of urgency filled the room. The doors slammed shut, sealing their fate. What awaited them in that darkness? Would the ghosts of the house demand payment for trespassing? The struggle between curiosity and terror pulsed violently in the air, leaving the couple desperate to discover the hidden truths buried beneath the sands of time. In that moment, all that mattered was survival. Yet, would they ever leave that cursed beach house alive? The oppressive silence wrapped around Tom and Emily like a thick fog. Heartbeats thundered in their ears, drowning out the earlier laughter that echoed through the cellar. They turned slowly, their flashlight beams darting nervously across the damp walls, illuminating grotesque shadows that twisted and pulsed as if the darkness itself was alive. What was that? Emily hissed, her eyes wide and glistening with fear. She was grasping Tom's arm tightly, fingernails digging into his skin, but he barely felt it. The air was heavy, almost suffocating. I don't know, he stammered, fighting against the chill that settled deep in his bones. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to turn back, to escape back to the safety of the moonlit surface above. But the unseen force pulling them deeper into the cellar rooted him in place. The scratching grew louder, clawing at the thin veil of silence. It wasn't just a noise, it was a terrifying rhythm, like nails dragging against wood, persistent and maddening. Tom's hand trembled as he turned the flashlight towards the source, a crumbling wall at the very back of the cellar. Emily took a hesitant step forward, and then another. What's behind that? she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The scratching had picked up the pace, now a frantic scrabble. Tom, overwhelmed by a mix of courage and fear, stepped closer beside her, his hand brushing against hers in a silent promise to protect her. She tilted her head towards him, searching for reassurance, but before he could respond, the sound ceased. That deafening silence was even more unsettling. Maybe it stopped. He murmured, more to convince himself than her. Without warning, the wall cracked open, splintering like frozen earth under spring's thaw, and a small figure burst through, tumbling headlong. A girl stumbled into their beam of light, her face smeared with dirt, eyes wild and glistening. She was no more than 7, dressed in tattered clothes that hung like rags from her small frame. Tom's breath hitched in his throat. She looked eerily similar to the girl they'd seen through the window that first night. "Help me!" she cried, the plea a cacophony of despair. "They're coming!" Tom instinctively stepped back, an icy fear gripping his heart. "Who is coming?" he asked, although deep down, he feared he already knew the answer. "The shadows," she gasped, scrambling to her feet, glancing behind her as if expecting an unseen predator to emerge at any moment. "You have to get out of here. You don't belong in this place." Tom exchanged a glance with Emily. Her face was pale, eyes darting between the girl and the undulating shadows of the cellar. "We can't leave her," Emily pleaded, stepping forward. "What do you mean, shadows?" Before Tom could voice his protests, the wall began to tremble. The ancient stone cracked further, and the room filled with an ominous chant, a chorus of whispers that grew louder, resonating with an anger that made the very air throb. The girl screamed, "Run! Please!" But before they could think, the shadows that had lingered at the edges surged forward, cloudy forms reaching out like grasping hands. Tom's legs reacted before his mind could process the danger. He grabbed Emily and dived for the stairwell. All around them, the temperature dropped, the shadows coiling, ready to snatch at their heels. The laughter rang out again with a haunting allure, almost beckoning as they stumbled towards the light above. "What the hell is happening?" Tom shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I don't know." Emily yelled back, her voice tinged with panic, but nothing could stop the looming dread that chased them up the stairs. As they scrambled through the door, slamming it behind them, a sudden silence blanketed the air. Would that be the end? Or had they merely scratched the surface of the darkness that resided within the cursed house? But then, a soft tapping sounded from behind them, a rhythmic, gentle knock that promised to shatter the silence, a reminder that the shadows were still there, lurking, waiting for their next chance. What horrors awaited now, above the threshold of the cellar? They couldn't shake the feeling that discovery was inevitable. They burst through the door and slammed it shut, the heavy thud echoing into the darkness behind them. Heart pounding, Tom leaned against the door, panting as if he'd just run a marathon. Emily pressed her back against the wall, fingers trembling as they slid across the peeling wallpaper. "Did you hear that?" she breathed, eyes wide with terror. He nodded, feeling the chill of unease settle back into his bones. The tapping continued, steady and rhythmic, like a metronome in a horror movie. Each knock sent jolts of dread through him, as if something or someone was counting down to their next move. It's probably just the wind," he managed, glancing around. The hallway loomed dark and narrow, seeming to stretch farther than he remembered. The air was thick, the musty smell overwhelmed him, clinging to his clothes like a second skin. "No, Tom. This feels wrong. We shouldn't be here," Emily whispered, shifting nervously. She was right. This place was suffocating, heavy with secrets that tangled like vines around their hearts. They turned as a creak echoed through the hallway behind them. The atmosphere shifted, thickened. Shadows seemed to flit just out of sight. Tom swallowed hard, fighting the urge to run. "What if we're not alone?" he asked, voice cracking as he took a step back. He cast a glance down the hall. Nothing but dirty old portraits seemed to stare back at them, eyes glimmering in the low light. They were trapped, and what pressed them forward was the haunting memory of the girl's terrified screams. "Upstairs," Emily said abruptly, her voice stronger now. "There might be a way out from there." She took a tentative step forward, pulling him with her. Reluctantly, Tom followed. Every footfall sounded too loud against the worn wooden floors, echoing as if the house itself was listening. They climbed the narrow staircase, winding their way up past walls shrouded in shadows. As they reached the landing, the tapping grew louder. "What is that?" Emily urged, her fingers latching onto the banister, knuckles white. "I don't know, but it's getting closer," Tom hissed, glancing back down the stairs, bracing himself for something to emerge. He felt a sharp pull in his gut, a primal instinct warning him to flee. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway opened slightly, a sliver of dim light spilling out into the darkened passageway. "Help me." The voice was thin and fragile, like that of a child. Both Tom and Emily froze, eyes widening as the little girl they had seen in the cellar appeared in the opening, her face a mask of fear painted with shadows. "Please. They can't find you." Before Tom could process her words, the house shuddered, a low groan reverberating through the walls. Furniture rattled, and the air grew thicker, pressing down on them with suffocating force. "Not again. How did you get here?" Tom managed, trying to make sense of this nightmare. "Come with me before they see you." The girl beckoned, stepping into the hallway. But something about her seemed off, the shadows clung to her, and a dark aura surrounded her tiny frame. "Wait!" Emily shouted, but Tom felt an unholy compulsion to move closer to that glimmer of light. It was a distraction, a desperate pull towards safety, and yet, there was something deeply wrong. "What do we do?" Emily gasped, her voice trembling. I don't know." Tom felt himself stepping forward, heart racing. Every instinct urged him to run. Then a dreadful noise echoed from below, deep and chilling, a chorus of whispered threats that twisted his stomach into knots. They weren't just whispering, they were calling for him. "Run!" The girl screamed, mouth wide with unlocked terror, her figure flickering with the shadows as if she were part of the very darkness. Before they could make a choice, Tom's body moved of its own accord, and he dashed toward the glowing door, pulling Emily after him. The girl screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness, and as they fled, Tom looked back just in time to see the haunting visage of shadows clawing through the doorway, forming shapes that were all too familiar. They stumbled into the room, slamming the door shut behind them. The air grew still, thick with anticipation. But the silence was deceptive, an eerie calm before the storm brewing just outside. What awaited them in that room? Did they truly escape the shadows, or would they become part of their nightmare too? As they took deep breaths, every instinct warned them that the darkness was far from finished. A slow, insipid tapping began at the door, each knock a cold promise that the shadows were still hunting. Would they find out what lay hidden in the darkness or be consumed by it? The room was dim, the flickering light from a candle on a rickety table casting distorted shadows against the walls. Breathlessly, Tom and Emily pressed their backs against the door, trying to steady their racing hearts. The tapping continued, more insistent now, echoing like a death knell, and the solitude of their small sanctuary felt like a cruel joke. What were those things? Tom whispered, scanning the room for anything that might offer safety or tools against whatever hunted them. "I don't know, but we can't just hide here," Emily replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "We need to find a way out." The tapping morphed into a series of frantic raps, an impatient demand that enmeshed their thoughts. With each knock, Tom felt a twinge of regret. They shouldn't have come here. This was not a place for curiosity, it was a tomb shrouded in echoes of despair. As the door shook, Tom dared to look around. An old dresser loomed in the corner, its drawers slightly ajar. He made his way over, still hearing Emily's ragged breaths behind him. "Stay close," he urged, his voice almost a whisper. He yanked open the nearest drawer, revealing nothing but dust and a few crumpled-up papers. Frustrated, he turned to face Emily. "There's got to be something here. I don't like this, she faltered, her gaze tracing the corners of the room as if expecting something to break the silence. What if those things can come through this door? Tom's heart sank at her words. They will. We need the room shuttered again, but this time the footsteps were more distinct. Heavy and deliberate, they crunched on the floorboards below, a menacing reminder of their pursuers. They're coming. Emily hissed, eyeing a small window perched high on the wall. Help me. Tom shouted, adrenaline surging through him. Together, they rushed towards the window, grasping at the frame. It was covered in years of grime, fingerprints barely visible beneath the dirt. He pushed. It wouldn't budge. Tom. Look. Emily pointed, panic in her eyes. The doorknob was twisting, a figure projected against the thin wood. Whoever or whatever was out there was almost inside. His heart thundered like a drum. We have to break it. He grabbed a nearby chair and slammed it against the window, splintering the frame. They could hear the creaking of the door behind them, a sickening sound that split the air. Just do it. She shouted, her voice overcoming the rising dread. With one solid blow, the glass shattered, sending shards raining down into the room. They were free, but the noise they created was a beacon. Come on. Tom shouted, lifting Emily up through the opening. She scrambled outside, and he hoisted himself after her, careful not to cut himself on the jagged edges. The night air hit them like a wall of cold water, invigorating yet filled with that heavy dread they felt inside. They scrambled down into the overgrown yard, the moonlight casting ghastly shadows against the house. What now? Emily gasped, her breath coming in short bursts as they backed away from the house, its silhouette looming like a predator. We need a plan, Tom said, deeply aware that the dangers were far from over. They ran toward the woods beside the beach house, each branch snapping like a secret being uncovered. Just then, from the shadows, a familiar voice echoed. You should listen. Tom froze, an icy chill running down his spine. The voice was unmistakable. It belonged to the little girl from inside the house. No, he whispered, glancing back at the house, now an ominous barrier between them and the sanctuary of the trees. Don't go near her. Emily cried, tugging at his arm, but Tom's feet wouldn't move. They were entranced by the figure, small but holding an undeniable power. Help me, the girl said, as the shadows shifted behind her, beginning to creep closer. The screams of terror hung in the air as realizations churned in Tom's mind. The girl was just as trapped as they were, but was she there to help or to condemn? What do we do? He murmured, his heart pounding with dread, knowing the choice pressing on him. As the shadows reached for him, he felt the room behind him was still waiting, and he had to decide, dive into the darkness or stay in the comfort of the light. A gust of wind swept past, the girl's expression changing to one of fury, twisting into a nightmare. And so, with each step towards her, the shadows pulsed, and the question lingered. This wasn't just about escaping anymore, it was about what they were willing to confront in the depths of that darkness. Where was the line drawn between salvation and damnation? Tom had to make a choice, but it could cost them everything. The girl's voice hung in the air like a chilling omen, her eyes widening as the shadows writhed around her. Tom felt a gravitational pull, as if the very earth underneath his feet was urging him to step forward. What do you want? He managed to choke out, his voice suffocated by confusion. Help me, she repeated, and with each word, the shadows deepened, darkening the space between them and the woods. They clamored for attention, curling around her like hungry wraiths. Emily tugged harder on Tom's arm, desperation igniting her strength. We can't trust her. Please, Tom, we need to go. But her pleas didn't penetrate his trance. The little girl's voice was both a siren song and a warning, weaving a tapestry of dread and curiosity. I can't escape without you, she pleaded. They won't let me go. Tom's heart raced, a mix of sympathy and instinct pushing him toward her. What do you mean? He asked, his breath trembling. The girl took a step forward. They are trapped here too. It's not safe, she gestured weakly back toward the house. You heard them. They can smell fear. Shivers crawled up Tom's spine. He didn't know if the girl was a victim or part of the horror. Still, the pit of his stomach twisted painfully. Behind them, the wind rustled the trees, whispering secrets as if warning them. The shadows began to twist more aggressively around the girl, as if she were their puppet. Run! Now! Emily screamed, sensing the intensity in the air shift as the shadows lunged forward. Something deep within Tom snapped. He felt the urgency of her words and the instinct to survive overpower everything else. Let us go. He shouted, tearing away from the girl's pleading eyes. They sprinted into the woods, branches slashing at them as if trying to hold them back. The shadows pursued relentlessly, their presence palpable, pressing against Tom's back like hot breath. Faster! He urged, fueled by instinct, the impending darkness smothering him. The trees loomed high, blocking the moonlight, plunging them deeper into obscurity. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown. Even as they advanced, the feeling of being watched clawed at the back of Tom's mind. Emily stumbled on a root, her scream silenced by the night as she regained her footing. They're still coming, she gasped, glancing over her shoulder, her expression wild. Tom felt a surge of adrenaline. Keep moving. Emerging beyond the tree line, they burst into a clearing bathed in pallid moonlight. However, it didn't bring relief. The ground beneath them was littered with broken branches and stones that pointed like accusatory fingers toward the restless shadows. This isn't over. Emily cried, her eyes wide and fearful. They'll find us. The atmosphere pulsed with a sinister energy, every rustle felt like footsteps creeping closer. Still reeling from their harrowing escape, Tom forced himself to think clearly. Beneath the adrenaline, a stubborn thought rooted itself in his mind. There's got to be something here. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of something between the trees, a structure hidden in the darkness. Look! He pointed, urgency screaming through his veins. An old shed. It could have supplies inside. Are you sure it's safe? She hesitated, panic coursing through her. No, but it's better than out here. He shot back, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward it. As they approached the shed, something shuffled inside, a low groan echoing within the wooden walls. Tom's heart skipped a beat. They didn't have a plan, just a desperate hope. Should we? Emily asked, her voice trembling as they halted at the door. Maybe there's something that can help us or explain what's really going on, he replied, steeling himself. The loose hinges creaked ominously as Tom pushed the door open. Inside was a swirl of shadows and dust, boxes slumped against one another, and the smell of mildew filled the air. But in the corner, something flickered. A faint glow emanated from an object lying half concealed. Is that? Emily whispered, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity, but before Tom could answer, a sudden shriek pierced the silence, freezing them in place. The shadows flared, contorting as if alive, and a caustic whisper wrapped around them. Thank you for coming back. The door slammed shut behind them, and the suffocating darkness enveloped their last hopes. Caught between horror and the last fleeting touch of light, Tom's heart raced. They had stepped too far into the unknown. The question rang in the air, had they truly escaped the trap, or had they only walked deeper into it? And what awaited them now? The door slammed with a force that echoed like a cannon shot, and darkness flooded the room. It felt alive, pulsating with a malevolent energy that clawed at Tom and Emily's resolve. They stood paralyzed, breath caught in their throats, the air thick with dread. What was that? Emily's voice trembled as she turned to Tom, eyes wide with horror. I don't know, he whispered, his heart pounding against his ribs like a caged animal. We need to find a light. They scanned the dim space, shadows lurking like predators ready to pounce. He stepped cautiously forward, each footfall stirring dust and memories from the corners of the shed. Tom strained his eyes, searching for the source of the flickering glow. In the far corner, he caught sight of it, an old lantern, its glass cracked but still somehow illuminating a path of waning hope. He lunged for it, fumbling to ignite its flame. Emily pressed against him, hyper-aware of the suffocating darkness closing in. "Tom, hurry!" As if fueled by her desperation, the wick finally lit, casting an eerie, trembling light around them. Relief washed over Tom, but it was short-lived. The shadows writhed at the edges of the glow, whispering secrets that only they could hear. "What do they want?" Emily's voice cracked. They're not just shadows." Tom swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle like lead in his stomach. "There's something wrong with this place. We have to unravel it." As if answering him, a low growl escaped from the farthest corner of the shed, sending chills down their spines. The shadows congregated in a fierce swirl, and suddenly the doll from earlier, the girl's toy, sailed through the air, colliding with the lantern and plunging them into darkness once more. "No!" Tom shouted, scrambling on the floor, trying to find the lantern in the inky abyss. Emily's terrified gasps echoed in the quiet. "We can't stay here, Tom." He reached blindly into the dark, fingertips grazing the wooden wall. A shudder ran through him as cold air brushed his face, a breath of dread. "I can't lose you too," he murmured, desperation clawing at him. In that moment, a low voice hissed from the shadows, smooth and seductive. "Do you think you can escape? She needs you to stay." Tom's heart leapt to his throat. He could feel the presence now, a force wrapping around him, coiling like a serpent. "Who are you?" he shouted into the black void, his defiance tinged with fear. "I am what you fear. What she fears." The voice laughed, each note echoing around them like the haunting chime of a distant bell. "The shadows are just the beginning." With that, a flicker returned, illuminating a figure lurking at the edge of the light. Tom squinted, and his breath caught. It was the girl, her expression twisted from fear to sinister amusement. "Help me," she echoed, but her eyes sparkled with a dark understanding. "You need to find them, or you'll never leave." The weight of the revelation pressed down on Tom. "What do you mean, find them?" "The others," she whispered, the shadows shifting around her as if in agreement. "They're waiting for you, to join them." Tom could feel the air in the shed grow colder. The shadows began to elongate, stretching toward him as if to pull him in. Emily's terrified eyes met his, and he saw in them a reflection of his own fear. "Now, we have little time," the girl urged. "Do you dare uncover the truth?" A primal instinct screamed at Tom to flee, yet the flickering light surrounded him like a cocoon, trapping him between the terrifying choice of fighting or succumbing to the darkness. Just then, a cacophony of wails erupted from the shadows, resonating with the cries of countless tormented souls. Tom clenched his jaw, heart hammering in his chest. He grasped Emily's hand tightly. "What if we can free them?" His voice had regained its strength. But before she could answer, the lantern sputtered, flickering dangerously. Moments slipped away like sand through fingers, and Tom's thoughts raced. This was a doorway. Perhaps a chance to confront whatever haunted the girl, the shadows, and even themselves. Yet, if they stepped forward, what would they uncover? What new horrors awaited them beyond the veil of shadows, and what if they couldn't handle the truth once it revealed itself? The air smelled of smoke and promises, thicker than the feelings choking him. They had to move, but would it bring them closer to freedom, or a deeper entrapment? And then came a voice from the very heart of the darkness, wrapping around them like a vice. "Choose wisely, or lose everything." As the lantern's flame dimmed one last time, Tom steeled himself. There was no turning back now. What would he find when they finally stepped into the depths of the unknown? The air felt electric as Tom and Emily steadied themselves, the shadows casting twisted shapes around them, each more sinister than the last. Tom's heart raced, a drum echoing the urgent need to act. He squeezed Emily's hand tighter, feeling the warmth of her skin contrasting against the cold seep of dread surrounding them. "On three, we move toward the corner," he whispered, trying to inject strength into their shaky resolve. We have to find the rest of the lantern. Emily nodded, her face pale, but determination flickered in her eyes. Okay, let us do this. 1, 2, 3. They stepped forward, cautious as if the very ground might crack beneath their feet. Darkness pressed in on them, and the wild whispers grew louder, spiraling into a cacophony of torment. The girl stood still, watching them, her smile eerie, her eyes glinting with some unfathomable knowledge that made Tom uneasy. The moment they neared the corner where shadows twisted thicker, the lantern sputtered weakly. Tom grimaced, its light flickering ominously. Hurry! He called into the blackness. They skidded to a halt at the base of a rickety shelf, where old tools lay abandoned, covered in layers of dust and neglect. Suddenly, a sound like scratching claws echoed in the shed's oppressive silence. The girl's demeanor shifted, eyes widening in alarm. They're coming, she hissed, voice cutting through the noise. You have to hurry. Without thinking, Tom reached for a hefty hammer just a foot ahead. Its cold metal was reassuring in his grip. We need to defend ourselves. He called to Emily, but there was no time for more. Dark shapes lunged from every corner, their intent crystal clear. He swung the hammer instinctively, missing one shadow that darted around his feet, while another latched onto Emily's ankle. Help! She yelped, of disbelief and terror. Get away from her! Tom roared, swinging wildly, the tool connecting with a shadow. It dissipated with a hiss, almost like steam in the wind. But he knew better, this wasn't over. And then something unexpected happened. From the shadows emerged an ethereal figure, a specter draped in long, tattered ribbons of fabric that billowed like smoke. Its face was obscured, but the voice was hauntingly familiar. Tom, it breathed, echoing memories he wished to forget. The figure drifted closer, and a chill enveloped him. He recognized the voice. It was Jonathan, his brother, lost so many years ago. Why are you here? Tom shouted, a swell of emotions crashing through him, anchoring him in place. What do you want? Uncover the truth. Set us free, brother. Jonathan's voice rang out, urgent, full of desperation. The shadows huddled around Tom, forming a vortex of pain and yearning, their whispers coiling tighter, like ivy around his limbs. Emily fought against them, her screams amplifying through the void. Let her go. He roared, his heartbeat drumming in his ears, fighting the memories of loss along with the suffocating shadows. Then, Jonathan pressed closer, his face finally revealed, eyes streaming with sorrow, reflecting all the lost hours spent in agony. You have the power, Tom. Only you can break this curse. Tom's grip tightened on the hammer. They were both caught in a long-forgotten nightmare. With every fiber of his being, he wanted to rescue his brother, but the fear of what lay ahead paralyzed him. What do I need to do? He gasped, desperation threading through his tone. Find us. Remember. Jonathan's voice faded, swallowed by the encroaching darkness, leaving only the commanding swirl of shadows. In that instant, Emily's scream cut through. Tom! Look out! He turned just in time to see a shadowy figure rushing toward him, eyes burning with malice. The lantern's last glimmer hung by a thread as he swung the hammer with all his might, hoping to cut through the darkness that threatened to consume them. As he connected with the figure, a deafening wail erupted, filling the air with a sound that seemed both joyous and agonizing. Then, silence fell. The shadows recoiled, pulling back momentarily, revealing a narrow path of potential escape, leading into deeper unknowns. Tom's breath hitched, confusion mingling with exhilaration. Had he freed something, or had he just unleashed a new terror? As the lantern flickered back to life, illuminating the figure of the girl, a mix of fear and awe painted on her face, she nodded slowly. You're ready to find them now. But before he could process her words, darkness surged again, more intense, trailing whispers of lost souls beckoning him to join the darkness. He could feel multiple paths emerging, but which one would lead to salvation? And which would trap them forever? Questions spiraled in his mind as shadows converged once more, ready to engulf them. Tom's breathing quickened as the shadows closed in, a living entity fueled by despair and rage. Emily's grip had loosened, and panic surged within him. "Stay close!" he shouted, eyes darting frantically around them. The flecks of light from the lantern cast an eerie glow, illuminating their path a mere heartbeat against the tide of encroaching horror. "Where do we go?" Emily's voice trembled, and Tom could see her fighting against the creeping tendrils of darkness that sought to wrap around her. The girl stood by the narrow path, eyes wide with urgency. "This way!" She beckoned, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the chaos like a knife. Tom grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her toward the girl. They dashed forward, forcing their way through the thick, roiling shadows. As they sprinted, Tom could hear faint whispers, a chorus of sorrowful voices clawing at his consciousness, pulling at the seams of his sanity. "Find us." Remember Jonathan's words reverberated in his mind, mixed with the wails of lost souls. Each footfall echoed with dread, each shadow a reminder of his brother's desperation. They reached the opening, stepping into a small space lit eerily by the lantern. Piles of dust swirled in the stagnant air, and old photographs hung crookedly on the walls, faces blurred by time and neglect. Tom gasped, recognizing one. "That's Mom," he whispered, his voice nearly caught in his throat. The girl nodded solemnly. "The memories are tied to this place. You must look closer." "Closer? What does that mean?" Tom asked, dread pooling in his stomach. He could feel the shadows lurking just beyond the threshold, closing in as if waiting for a chance to pounce. "Each photograph tells a story. Your brother's spirit is trapped here. You have to release him," she urged, a fire igniting in her eyes. Emily tugged at his sleeve, her expression fraught with concern. "What if we release something darker?" Tom hesitated, the weight of the choice heavy on his chest. "We need to try. We have to find the lantern's piece, it might lead us to him." The girl waved her hand, and the photographs glimmered momentarily. "You can do it. Open your heart. You must remember." With little choice left, Tom moved to the nearest photo and leaned in. The world around him faded as memories surged, slamming into him with an intensity that took his breath away. He saw faces he longed to forget, laughter intertwined with sorrow. His mother's gentleness, Jonathan's mischievous grin, and then darkness covering their home like a shroud. "Tom!" Emily cried out, her voice slicing through the memory. He turned toward her, but what he saw made his heart drop. Shadows twisted around her, clinging like a desperate lover. "Help me! They're pulling me back. Emily!" He lunged forward, tightening his grip on the lantern. The light flickered brightly, and he raised it high, illuminating the darkness that sought to devour them both. "Focus on your brother," the girl shouted, pointing at the photographs. "His spirit is calling for you." The whispers intensified, a relentless rush of voices claiming their reality. Tom felt the pressure of loss crushing down on him. "Jonathan!" he called out, feeling the connection surge. "I'm here." The shadows writhed, a chorus of anguished cries crescendoed, and suddenly, a figure began to materialize, a silhouette of his brother emerging from the swirling darkness, translucent yet unmistakable. "Tom!" Jonathan's voice rang out, full of desperate hope and yearning. "You must choose. Free me, or lose her." The choice hung in the stifling air, and Tom's heart pounded fiercely. Could he bear to reach for Jonathan and leave Emily behind? But as he stared into Jonathan's pleading eyes, the darkness around them pulsed with rage, clawing for release. The lantern trembled in his hand, casting a warm light that seemed to force the shadows back just for a moment. Tom knew then freedom demanded a price. "Stay strong, Em," he shouted, clinging to the hope that might save them both. And just when he thought he could reach Jonathan, another shadow lunged forward, snatching at his brother in a suffocating embrace. "No!" Tom bellowed, the choice slamming against his heart like a sledgehammer. A scream erupted, piercing through the chaos, and Tom was left standing on the precipice between two worlds. What sacrifice would he make to save the one he loved more? With the lantern flickering, illuminating the intense faces around him, uncertainty lodged in his chest, whispering doubts. He could feel the pull of the darkness, waiting, wanting him to falter. He drew in a shaky breath, heart pounding. The moment had come, but which soul would he save? The air thickened with tension, heavy enough to choke on. Tom felt the weight of the decision pressing on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Emily's terrified eyes, wide and pleading, locked onto his, while Jonathan's ghostly form shimmered in the dim glow of the lantern. Shadows clawed at the edges of their brief sanctuary, a monstrous whisper threatening to envelop them entirely. "Please choose." Jonathan's voice, now tinged with desperation, echoed through the room, pulling Tom's mind in two opposing directions. Save Emily, whose warmth still clung to him, or reach for the brother whose laughter echoed in his memory like a fading melody. Every heartbeat drummed a different choice, each one fraught with agony. "Tom." Emily's voice cracked as another wave of darkness surged against her, pulling her further into its grasp. "You can't let them take me. I know." He shouted back, grounding himself before the encroaching horror. With a swift motion, he turned back to the photo, the image of their family frozen in time, a flicker of hope in a tempest of despair. "Focus on the light." The girl insisted, urgency amplifying in her tone. The shadows were closing in again, but with every phrase of encouragement, he felt a pulsing warmth from the lantern that gave him strength. "Jonathan!" Tom yelled, the fear inside him bursting into fury. "I won't abandon you, I promise. Just hold on." Jonathan's figure wavered, the shadows swirling dangerously around him. "You can save us both, Tom. You have to believe." Tom felt a thread of resolve weaving through his panic. He stepped toward the photo again, forcing himself to let memories wash over him, days filled with sunshine, laughter, family dinners, and quiet moments of solace shared between him and Jonathan. The darker memories loomed, but they served only to fuel his desperation. "Emily!" he shouted, trying to cut through the chaos. "I won't let them take you. Hold on." He could see her now, the shadows snaking around her arms, tightening like a vice. With a sudden burst of determination, Tom swung the lantern wide, its golden light spilling out like a shield against the encroaching darkness. For a moment, the shadows shrank back, hissing in dismay, and in that moment of clarity, Tom knew what to do. "Remember," he murmured, focusing hard. "Remember our bond." An electric pulse surged through the lantern, illuminating the room in a brilliant blaze as if it had become its own sun. In that pivotal moment, Tom concentrated on love, on family, on the unbreakable ties that connected him to both Emily and Jonathan. Shadows shrieked and melted away, retreating into the corners from which they spawned. "Tom!" Emily cried as the light broadened, her voice fierce amid the chaos. "I can feel it." Jonathan reached out, his form becoming clearer as the shadows recoiled. "Together, Tom. Choose us. Choose love." As the light pierced through the darkness, a surge of warmth enveloped him, a force that filled him with a fierce protective instinct. He felt their connections weaving tighter, the memories brighter, the shadows growing thinner. "Together!" he shouted. "I choose you both." In that instant, the lantern exploded with light, engulfing them in a radiant explosion that pushed the shadows away. For a heartbeat, everything stood still. Time, fear, chaos suspended. Then, without warning, the force rippled outward, a shockwave of white-hot energy shaking the very foundation of the beach house. Tom felt a pull, a tearing sensation that strained at the edges of his soul. It was as if he was being ripped from one reality and thrust into another. His heart raced as he reached for Jonathan and Emily, desperate to hold on to them both. But as the brightness enveloped them, a final whisper threaded through the air, suffocating and sweet. "Remember," it purred, a voice he knew far too well. Just like that, the light flickered, and darkness surged around him once more, beckoning like a siren. Then it all went black, leaving only fragmented echoes of laughter and screams, questions hanging in the air like smoke. What reality awaited him now? And who would he face when the light faded? Tom awoke with a start, gasping as if surfacing from an endless abyss. He lay on the beach, the gentle lapping of waves against the shore grounding him. The sun bathed the landscape in golden light, a stark contrast to the horrors that clung to his mind like sticky webs of fear. He glanced around, half expecting shadows to emerge from the palm trees, but all he saw were families enjoying the summer sun, building sandcastles, and laughing. Was it all just a nightmare? Tom! A familiar voice called, pulling him from his daze. He shot up to see Emily sprinting towards him, her hair flowing behind her like a comet's tail. There was no shadow of fear in her eyes, only relief and warmth. Emily! He leapt to his feet, wrapping his arms around her as if the embrace alone could anchor them both to reality. I thought I know. She breathed into his shoulder, clutching him tightly. I thought we'd lost it all. Relief washed over him like a soothing wave, washing away the panic that had wrapped itself around his heart. They stood for a moment, taking in each other, aware that they had survived whatever darkness had threatened to consume them. But the weight of their experiences hung heavy still. Did we really escape? He whispered, glancing toward the beach house far in the distance, its once menacing form now just a relic of their nightmares. I think so, she answered, pulling back to meet his gaze. But we need to remember what happened. We need to make sense of it all. We have to find Jonathan, Tom said, sudden urgency igniting inside him. He couldn't just leave it behind. If he sacrificed so much, we can't forget him. Emily's eyes widened, realizing the truth behind his words. We can't let the shadows win. But how do we even begin? Maybe it starts here, where it all began. The lantern, the memories, it all ties back to the house. He took her hand, determination coursing through him. As they made their way back toward the beach house, a sense of camaraderie filled their hearts. Each step took them closer to confronting the past, to acknowledging the pain and unearthing the truth. The house stood eerily quiet, its boards creaking as if welcoming them once more. With resolute breaths, they turned the rusty doorknob and stepped inside. Instantly, the air thickened around them, remnants of fear clinging to the walls like faded photographs. Focus, Tom, Emily said, squeezing his hand. We can do this. Together they navigated through the corridors, each creak echoing memories of old. Then, inside the very room where they had faced the shadows, they found the remnants of the lantern, its pieces scattered amidst detritus. Tom knelt and gathered the shards, a pang of guilt washing over him. I'm sorry, Jonathan, he whispered, the weight of loss curling around his heart. I should have saved you. But at that moment, a gentle breeze swept through the room, as if reassuring him. I won't abandon you, he promised aloud, piecing the lantern back together. Emily joined him, each delicate touch reminding them that they were not alone. With the lantern restored, warmth radiated from its heart. Let us find him, Emily said, her voice steady. Tom nodded, holding the lantern high. As its light illuminated the darkness, the room vibrated, shadows swirling around them, whispering secrets of the long-forgotten. Together they called out Jonathan's name, letting their voices rise and swell. With every memory they shared, every tender moment spoken aloud, the shadows began to retreat. A hazy figure coalesced in the light, a silhouette that shone with a faint glow. Tom, Emily, Jonathan's voice filtered through the darkness. You found me. Together. Tom urged, feeling strength behind each word. We remember, we fight. The shadows roared, but the light surged brighter as the trio forged a bond stronger than fear. They all touched the lantern together, and in that moment, everything became clear. Love and memory were the anchors that would weave them safely through the labyrinth of dark. We choose you, Jonathan, they said in unison, their voices resonating with purpose. Unfurling like a flower, the light expanded, engulfing them in warmth and banishing fear. The shadows screamed, twisted, and were consumed, finally releasing their captive souls. With a brilliant flash, Tom felt a rush of wind whip through them, and in that moment, they were free. As the light faded, they found themselves back on the beach, laughter ringing out, children splashing in the waves. The sun hung high, casting a golden glow over everything. Jonathan stood beside them, solid and real, a soft smile on his face. "You did it," he said, his eyes filled with gratitude. Together, Tom reaffirmed, tears of joy mingling with relief. They embraced, the warmth of family encircling them, knowing they had faced the darkness and emerged forever changed. No longer trapped by old memories, they were ready to reclaim their lives. Filled with newfound strength, they strolled along the beach. The past had not vanished, but it no longer haunted them, each step forward a tribute to love conquering darkness. As the horizon glimmered with hope, Tom turned to Emily, sharing a smile that spoke volumes. They had fought to reclaim and heal, now, it was time to live. In those final moments of warm sunlight and crashing waves, they understood the essence of their journey. They were not just survivors, they were anchors of light in a world that too often turned dark, and with that, they stepped boldly into their new lives, cherishing every heartbeat, every breath taken together in the sun's embrace. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support the content we share. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this ending. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.